So today we're going to be making a wrought iron welded face Viking style hammer, and I'm starting with 2.5 inches of 2" by 1" wrought iron, which I am forging under the power hammer to inch square. You can start with inch square if you have some handy. I didn't, so I had to make my own. So the ends weren't quite straight after forging out under the power hammer, so upset them square. So because wrought iron doesn't harden particularly well, we're going to weld a EN42 carbon steel face to it. So I'm cut that to size, which is about inch square, and taper the edges to remove any shear plane from the areas that will be welded. That'll just help me blend the weld in a bit better. So once you've got the shape, pop over to the vise, and using a nice sharp chisel, just cut in some little tabs which will notch into the iron and hold the face in place. So once those are cut, I'll use a little square punch and just make sure that they are perpendicular to the face. View from another angle. So that's now ready to be fitted to the body of the hammer. So I'll get a nice bright heat on that, stick some flux on it. Not going to be welding at this stage, but it's nice to have some flux between the iron and the high carbon steel. Drop a dash on the face as well. I only actually use flux for welding carbon steels. Realise it's in the wrong place. There we go. That is now installed. So the next stage is to pile the fire up nice and high, whack up the air a little bit, just to get the fire hot. And start by heating the other end of the body of the hammer. If you don't preheat the back end, then it'll suck the heat out of the weld before you have a chance to weld it. So flux again at this stage. Make sure I cover it in flux and pop it in face first and weld. So a combination of welding straight down on the face and blending in the edges. You get a bit of distortion from the whole bar being hot, but it's nothing you can't sort out later. In fact, we do sort that out later. So first heat to tack, second heat to weld, and a couple more heats after that, just to make sure the weld's strong, blend in the face nicely, and then dress it back to square from where it will have upset. There you go, all welded. So next up I will mark off where I'm going to punch the eye of the hammer. And I'm doing it slightly off-centre because the square face of the hammer, we're making a crossbeam, the square face of the hammer is pretty much the length that it wants to be, but the crossbeam will be drawn out to a taper, so the eye will be punched further towards the crossbeam, because that material is going to draw out anyway. So I think not by much, I think I added maybe 3/8 of an inch to the location of the punched eye. So a lot of kind of Dark Ages hammers were actually forge-welded together, I believe, but punching this one. But I could have forge-welded it, would have made it a bit more interesting, would have made a longer video. So punch one side, turn over, punch the other side, and head over to the hardy, knock the slug out. You saw it popping out at the bottom. So punch through half the material, both sides, and then that means that both holes meet up in the middle. It makes for a neater hole. So then start drifting it. Now I made a bit of a mistake on this one in that I drifted it to full size before it was ready. Next time I will drift it most of the way and then drift it to final size as I'm finishing the hammer. It's actually the first hammer I've made since college. Certainly the first ever welded face hammer I've ever made. So at this stage, with the hole punched, start drawing out the crossbeam. I'm doing it, because this is wrought iron, I'm doing this close to a welding heat. Otherwise the iron tends to delaminate, and this is quite coarse iron that I'm using. So to compensate for the delamination, I actually got the tip of the crossbeam up to a welding heat and upset it back on itself. So that stage done, head over to the vise and chisel split the end of the crossbeam for another carbon steel insert to go in. And I will, same as with an axe, I will scarf the end just to make sure there isn't too much of a shearing plane, which will leave a mark in the weld. I hate visible welds with a passion. It's all ready for the carbon steel insert. So again using EN42. And I will taper the end of the material to a V shape, mainly because it will spread out again when I draw the taper on it. And then cut some tabs into it again and make sure they are perpendicular, same as the face weld. And these will just hold the carbon steel wedge into position. So install it. I close the kind of lips of the drawer before making sure it's tight, and that just saves it from spitting out when you're trying to close it, which is a recurring problem. So another mistake I made, I should have made the wedge a little bit wider. It would have been better and easier to weld and blend in. So I made a mental note for that next time. I should have known really, trying to rush it to get it filmed within a useful amount of time. So again, same as I usually do, one to tack, one to weld, and one to blend in. And then as many as you need afterwards to blend in. Well, not as many as you need, as many as is practical, because you don't want to get the carbon steel up to welding heat too much, because it just decarburizes more and more. So pop over to the bick, start rounding off that peen, and blend the weld in a bit better as well. You can see that the eye has collapsed from being worked, so we'll drift that out again in a minute. But it's all welded. A few little marks. You can just see a line where the weld is, which is really irritating. So next thing I do is to start drawing out the cheeks. So I'm using the crossbeam for that, and that is to create the, I don't know how to pronounce it, I've only ever read it, languettes, I don't know, whatever it is, spiky bits at the top of the eye. So drawing those out, it's the same as making them on an axe. I will shape them to a nice point with a ball peen. You could do it on the bick as well. Sort out the peen as well. I'm making the underside of the hammer flat on this, but I think if you look at original Scandinavian Viking hammers, they were the peen was sloping slightly back towards the hand of the user. I might do that on the production variant. This is just a prototype of the hammer, so I learned quite a lot from doing it. Dressing everything. Stick the drift back in, and you'll see that it's caused a bit more swelling, so just knock that out, make the longettes, spiky bits, slightly bigger. Quite often I use a wet anvil for dressing and final shaping. Didn't actually do it this time. You can see why I should have drifted the eye smaller to start with, because the eye is a bit deformed at the top now. So again, production version, that'll be sorted out. So that's the forge work completed. So normalise it. I could anneal it. I probably will anneal any others, but because it's wrought iron, won't actually harden itself. So lovely to file, and I literally just knocked off any ridges with a file just to tart it up a bit. Doesn't particularly need annealing because it's wrought iron and it's nice and soft. Just touch up the face and the peen with a file. Those could have done with being annealed, but they were plenty soft enough anyway. So lay down a nice tight bed on the fire. Left the autofocus running from taking some photographs. So you can see that weeing and wooing out. And bring it up to critical, keep it turning, let it soak in the heat for a good 15 minutes. I'll probably get a gas forge at some point for normalising, annealing and heat treating. It'll save me a lot of time. So this XCO2 cylinder is my small quench tank. Just stick it in the sand upright, fill it with oil. I use vegetable oil, it works plenty fine. Fill it up to maybe just under 3/4, or just over 3/4 rather, because the oil will rise with the heat. And I'll actually preheat it to around 60 degrees-ish. I think this one was around 75, 73 degrees. That is to increase the viscosity of the oil, or make the oil a bit more fluid, and that will help it cool the hammerhead quicker, paradoxically. If it's too viscous, it won't shift around your metal particularly quickly. There's probably technical terms to describe it, but when it's more fluid, it'll wick the heat away quicker. And quench. Bob it up and down. Help prevent the formation of a bubble of a shield of bubbles around it. And also aid in cooling it quicker. I was a bit wary of using a narrow quench tank like this, in case it didn't bring the heat down fast enough to harden the steel, but testing it with a file, it's hardened plenty well enough. So next I'll heat up the drift again, and just chop the head on it, and wait for the face and the peen to turn to a purple colour. And at that stage, cool it off. I did this 3 times, just to make sure that it was tempered. You could do it scientifically in an oven, but the ancestral way works quite well, so stick with that. Clean it up with a wire wheel and one hammerhead. You can really see the grain in the iron, it's quite nice. So next stage, just make a handle. I normally stick bought hickory handles on the axe heads and hammers that I make, but this is a Viking style hammer, probably going to go to reenactment use. With a museum display would be quite nice, which is what I'm ultimately aiming for, so actually made a handle for it. So roughed it out with an axe and used the parang from the video a few weeks ago to one of the parangs. Use that as a draw knife to do the final shaping, and as a scraper. Look at that, isn't that satisfying to see it just peeling off like that? Could watch a 15-minute video of just that. Hit it with a rasp, and just to even it all out. Then I'll actually burn the handle a bit. I find that cleans up any bits of fibre that are sticking out and dries the wood a bit, hardens the wood a bit, shrinks the wood a bit. Makes it a bit more grippy, less slippery in your hand. It's quite an attractive aesthetic effect as well. Just tap that in. That's not smoke rising, by the way, that's dust from sanding. Stick a wedge in. Just hold it in place. It's quite tight. Don't think it's going to fly off anywhere, but the wedge will hold it. And cut that off to size. And charge it up with a file again. And finish with linseed oil. And there we go, one Viking style wrought iron face welded hammer. So it's loosely based on the Scandinavian hammer finds, some from northern England as well. It's not based on any particular model or find, just because I wanted to explore the techniques more than anything. So I'll probably do some proper reproductions further down the line. So thanks for watching, those of you who stayed to the end, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.